Okay, good evening everyone. If I speak too fast, let me know. If there's something you don't understand, let me know. If you got any questions, interrupt immediately, and I'll try to answer them as far as I can. He's in charge of the microphone right now. He will pass it along if it has to be.
May I ask in French the questions?
You can try ask them in French. Most probably I will understand them, but I don't speak it not good enough, so thereby I'm just going to answer it in English if that's okay with all of you. Okay, so we're here to learn about Flex. First of all, I would like to tell you a bit what Flex actually is. Flex was originally released in 2004 by Macromedia back then. It was originally conceived as a rich internet application development environment. And to this day, it still is actually. Saying that or throwing around buzzwords doesn't really help much, because most people actually had a big problem understanding the differences between what Flash is supposed to be and what Flex is supposed to be. Because you could build a RIA if you want with Flash purely, or you can build it with Flex. So people actually always were worried or didn't even really know where to start. Why should I even use Flex? So let me show you some small differences to begin with, what Flex is and what Flash is. So first of all, as you see here, we got the Flash environment. This is the newest Flash environment. That's from the CS4. And who's worked with Flash so far? Most of them, okay. So you know the basic things, how they work. You got a timeline up here where you can do animations. You got the stage where you can start drawing things and move them around if you feel like it, and so on and so forth. Once you get to know Flash a little better, you possibly will want to use some code. You will probably try and do some Actionscript, which you would do in this window here, as it's always been and probably will always be. Now, this is pretty much what Flash is about. You can, of course, do pretty amazing things with Flash, and you can, as I said, build rich internet applications with it, because it comes with already a basic set of things you always need when you build an application. You have buttons, as we see here. You got, what else could I drop in here? A color checker, or color picker actually, and so on and so forth. Now, why Macromedia decided to build Flex is actually quite reasonable and easy to understand. Flex really helps you build rich internet applications fast. That is to say, prototyping is really fast. Once you get into details and you actually want to fine-tune an application, you will waste time like with every other language. But it will help you make things easier. So if you're used to this environment, seeing Flex is quite different. Some of you might actually recognize it, because Flex Builder now, actually since 3 is based, or since 2, I'm not even sure anymore, is based on Eclipse. And you can install it either as a standalone Flex Builder thing that comes with Eclipse packaged and everything, or you can just install it by downloading the plugin from Adobe. Now, the big difference here already, you got no timeline, and you will never find a timeline in here. It doesn't exist. So if you really need to do animations, you will be stuck with this. Either way. But you still got something where you can push stuff around. So let me show that to you real quick. I'm not going to go into details on that yet. I'll show that later. This looks slightly different than what we just saw before. As you see, you already here got a button actually. You can still drag it around as you want. And another thing that you will not find here is you cannot just start drawing things, because this is not what Flex is all about. Okay. This is really just short introduction to some simple differences between the two. The actual difference shows once you start looking actually at things that people have built with it. So I have some links here really quickly. Let's go full screen. There we go. Okay. What this is supposed to be is, who knows Last.fm? probably most people. Okay, this is a Flex application where you can actually enter a user and you'll get this, what should I call it, diagram, spiderweb thing, where you see actually the last things that a user actually listened to. And the whole thing is actually built in Flex. And it's quite nice, you can drag stuff around. But this is now a really good example also. This could also be easily done with Flash. It doesn't really need Flex for all these things, but it does simplify development regardless. I'll show you later why this is the case. But just to show how pretty it is, you can then drag in more users, or does anyone have a username that he wants to display in here? Oh God, is that right? Is it LL? Oh, okay. Ah, pretty. Yeah, well, I didn't do it, it's not my fault. Did I write it right? Is that the way it's supposed to be written? Let's see, I know someone else's username, so I'm just going to drag that in and hopefully it works. Ah, there we go. So as you see, you can easily add information in here and it looks pretty, and it actually even shows you the connections between some users, even if they don't know each other really. It shows who's listening to what and what the similarities are, as also shown over here, or Johnny Cash over here. So this is an example of what you could build with Flex, but as I said, this is also something you could easily build with Flash. Something else that you could build with Flash, but is also easier to develop with Flex, is this case here. I don't know who knows Wilma, except I figured you were going to say that. Wilma actually is something similar to Zatu. Maybe I should mute this a little, it's kind of loud. Yeah, it pretty much shows by itself already what it is. It's online TV. Quite simply built actually. You drag some buttons, you repeat them, you got a screen for the TV. Here probably most work actually went into the backend to achieve this online streaming. But actually building this application is quite quickly done. I have to close it because else it's just going to keep babbling at us. Another application that you might know is Buzzword. This actually now shows you what Flex is capable of and what Flex is actually built for. If I log in. That's going to take a second. It's actually these cases that make Flex or give Flex the power. Pretty much this is an online Word, yeah, as I said, an online Word, an online office tool, so you could write your letters, whatever, and so on and so forth. You got exporting capabilities that you could export it to PDF. As you see, you got a whole ton of things that you could export it to. You can print, so pretty much online you got everything you need to write your letters, to print them out, to make them look pretty. You got tabs, what else could you insert? You can insert a table if it has to be. So yeah, this actually is a nice example of what you could achieve with Flex. Or else we also got another one that is one of my personal favorites because it works really well when it loads. Which brings me to another thing. This is also one of the big differences between Flash and Flex. Flex uses a framework, or is based on a framework that is rather large, and thereby, as you see, it takes a while until things load, because it has to load the whole framework to begin with to give you the capabilities that you need for a Flex application. There we go. As you see, SlideRocket is actually also an office tool if you want, so you can make your own presentations in here, and it's actually quite powerful. You can integrate pictures, you can integrate text as usual, whatever you would expect. You can draw shapes. In that shape you can then place another text field, place that text field in it, do whatever you want with it actually, add flash. I don't have any flashes, I just noticed. I'm pretty sure I don't have any on my desktop anywhere. Or for example, it integrates Flickr. Gives you the pictures that you could choose from. So you just grab one. And eventually integrates it. So this is also a very advanced example of what you can actually build with Flex. And one of my absolute favorites up to this day, even though it's actually not that new, is pretty much a Photoshop, if you want so. Even though Adobe actually built their own Photoshop based on Flex, Photoshop Express, but this is actually much more powerful, I noticed, and comes with a whole ton of features. And it's also a very nice example of what you can achieve with Flex. As you see, you've got all sorts of rulers and draggers and knobs and possibilities. You even got filters that you can use upon things. So this is actually quite powerful. Okay. These are just some examples actually. I had to find them really quick actually because it's kind of hard to find good Flex examples because there's no site at the moment that, you know, indexes them or gives them awards or anything specifically for Flex, I have to say. So what do you need so you could develop Flex? Actually, all you need is technically a text editor, because Flex, or at least the SDK, where do we have the window? The SDK of Flex has been open sourced, which means you can develop your own Flex applications without the need of any further software, except obviously a text editor that you can write the code in. And everything else Adobe provides you with. There's the SDK somewhere, if I could find it. I cannot find it right now, but I will. Ah, there it is, right on top, if I weren't blind. So as I said, they provide you with everything you need. There's a compiler that is rather easy to use. It's good documented how to use it. And you can go develop actually right away. If you're not comfortable with a text editor, which most probably most of you aren't, because I'm not either, unless there's TextMate users here. There's also open source projects that have gotten quite far. For example, Flash Develop, which allows you to develop just Flash content or Flex content quite easily, actually. And as you will see from these pictures here, it's actually not that much different than the Flex Builder, and completely free. So really, all you need is the setup of the SDK and something you can write code in, and you can go. Obviously, Flex though is, or the Flex Builder is a good solution because it comes with this design view that nobody else has. So if you like actually to, and I will show you why this is nice to have, if you really need this or want fast prototyping, this is really useful. But as you see in the back, still all just text. All right. So, instead of actually giving you more of that stuff, I will show you a little bit what you can do. Best way to probably start is I will show you how Flex can help you with fast prototyping of certain of an application. As you see down here, on the left on the bottom, you've got components. You got button, checkboxes, so on and so forth. The list is actually quite long. All sorts of components that you would use in any type of application. So let's say I want some window thing. I make this 500 width, give it a width of 500. I make it, let's say, 400 high. There we have it. Now obviously, that's too big for this screen. But no problem. As you see, the design view allows you to change these things quite simply. So now I actually just got a box here. But this box I can manipulate by changing values of it. Like, let's say I make it black, even though that's kind of ugly. That's fine with me. And I can give it a border. Border color should be black. That's nice and all, but since rounded corners are nice nowadays, let's make some rounded corners. There we go. I like that. Now, this is not going to do much. I would like to actually show some text in it. So I grab myself a label over here, drag this in here, have a label. I'll just keep it where it is right now. And I double click it. Hello Webmardi. And there we go. I got already pretty much simple, very, very, very basic dialogue. Okay. Now let's say we want to build actually something complicated. I'll take this out. For example, let's say we have an application that is 2 screens. There's like a welcome screen, and there's then another screen that has maybe buttons or options or whatever. I cannot think of any good example of what we want to build right now, but let's just say we have an application that needs 2 screens, and it needs to be able to switch between those 2 screens. So one way, that's one thing that I have to tell you already, Flex gives you so many possibilities. There's not just one way of how you can do things, there's at least 5 for everything you want to do. There's best practices for most of these things, but I'm not going to give you a talk about best practices because then else by the end of the week we're still going to be here. So, states over here on the top right. States allow you to, how should I explain this? Think of it as layers that can have sublayers. It's pretty much like Photoshop if you want so. So let's say this is my base state. You can always have a state that is pretty much the origin of everything. So if I want to change things, I can say I want to make a new state. I call this screen 2. And I'm going to base it on this screen that we have here, on this box here. So I press OK. And as you see, I get a sub state here actually. And let's make another one. Screen 3. Oops, that was wrong. Sorry. There we go. Okay. So now these 2 screens take the information that is from the base state and start off with that information actually. So let's say this base state should be looking something like that. As you see, this is still my original. Maybe I should change that too. Let's give that the ugly black here. And let's change this one to red. So every state will take this one, the base state, as the original and make a copy of it. Actually, not even a copy. We'll just remember that information and change only the things that I change in the in the specific state to display as you see the changes, obviously. So both screens actually now have 2 different colors, but the original is still untouched. So this is actually quite nice. For example, if we say you have, let's get a button here. You have a first state that is, as I said, is a welcome screen. There we have the button. And then you have a second state. I have an idea. Let's make this an about screen. It's probably easier. Let's say this is the first about screen that you will see. That will have like a graphic in it and everything, nice logo of your application, what it's called. And then you want a credit screen where you can actually show off who's been working on that program. So we start off, this is the, let's call it now the about screen. And then we have the credit screen. And in the credit screen, we will also place a button, just to make sure people can get back. And we will place a label where we just have blah blah blah. There we go. Okay. Now, as you see, you can rather quickly, you could actually design an application, the screens of an application, what it's supposed to look like, what it should do, the buttons, and just all those sorts of components that you need within, and already preview them for yourself in here. Now the next step obviously would be they need to interact with each other. So we go to the about screen and we take the button, and over here in the Flex properties, which is just a really nice way of showing all the capabilities that a button has, and gives you a way of changing the view of a button. You could actually enter some code over here, like go to next screen. But that's not going to do much. This is actually where you will have to use some coding, but it's rather simple. Now, this is what happens in the back. As you see, Flex has actually written all the code that you need to display these two screens actually. I will explain it really quickly actually what everything is. Mxml is actually nothing else than glorified XML, as you notice by the XML header here on top. It has a root node, which in this case is mostly always actually this application node, unless you want to build further, but we'll show that later. And these are the states. So you have to actually show this a little bit better. All this information here makes up actually what these two screens are. So the about screen is this little piece of code where Flex tells, in the end, tells the compiler then, I've got this box here and I want the background color to be this value. And here it actually also references back to your base state. So it's relative to hbox1, which is here on the bottom. That's always the base state, in my case now. And obviously you got the button. This is not relative to anything or does not reference anything because it's simply just in that state and it does not, it's not copied or cloned into any other state, so there's no further information here. The credit state has a little bit more information. Again, it has this set style tag, which tells that the box that I built should have, again, a different color. It also references the box again, so I actually even know what it is. And again, a button that is solely in this state, and obviously the text that I entered. Now, as I said, we need to enter some code. And it's actually rather simple. Flex, especially Eclipse actually, gives you a whole set of features and tools that are quite useful, like this code completion. And for most, pretty much all components, it actually will tell you the properties and values that you can change. So it's not, oh my god, how do I change the width again of this thing? And you have to go into the manual. No, it will actually tell you. I see, oh here, okay, width. I can change how wide this button should be. I want it to be 300. And if I go and look, which one did I actually edit? The about one. As you see, it already has changed that. So the same thing with adding interactions, events. You also have them in here. Now I know, obviously, because I've been working with this way too long, that in order to actually achieve something, I need a click event. So I add this click event, and this equals or is exactly the same as if I would go here and have this on-click box over there. So this is another nice thing, because, for example, let's say you got a designer or someone who creates the UI for you but has no coding experience. He can create just the whole layout and everything, how it's supposed to look like, and he can fill in here already, like for example, switch to credits. And if I go into the source, I see, oh, okay, this thing wants to call a switch to credits method. It was okay, let's do that. Now, here, Flex gives you the possibility to add Actionscript code immediately also into the Mxml. So what I will do here is actually just enter such a function. So I call it switch to credits. Now, if I would pass in here, I don't know if that's already too detailed, but since every event that you do in Flash and Flex gives you an event object, it tells you a couple things like what type of event did I actually just receive, or other properties, other information can be in it. But in this case, I really don't care actually what type of event it is, because I know exactly what I want to do when I click this button. So what I do now is I want to switch the state. So I set current state is, in this case, I want to go to credits. And the same thing for the credits. I add switch to credits, switch to about, and I make a new function here, switch to about, and I set the current state as about. Now, another nice thing of Flex Builder, I don't know how Flash Develop handles this, is, for example, if I would add here, like let's say 1, it tells me right at the bottom, hey dude, what the hell are you doing? I'm expecting a string here. Alright, let's fix that then. So without you having to compile and actually test things out and getting those nasty errors that you saw before on Last.fm, in here you will actually already be able to eliminate, let's say, about 90% of the errors that could occur. So now that we've done this, we compile it, and then we realize that we didn't make the window big enough, but that we can change easily too. We'll just say this thing is 700 width, and we give it 700 height. Oh, yeah. Very good. Thank you. Obviously, as you just noticed, I forgot to actually set what the beginning state should be, because if no beginning state is around, it will automatically just take the base state, because this is set as the start state. Now, I either got the possibility to actually set it in here in the design view that this is my start state, which I'm going to do now, and it will add me the code that I need to do. So here it's pretty much the same thing. Current state is about, as we've seen before. Let's try it again. There we go. And if I click on it, voila, I'm already switching around. So with pretty much no effort whatsoever, I already I'll be able to create a prototype where people can actually click through the whole things and test how they think it reacts, how people will respond to it. So this is a great tool actually for prototyping. For example, friends of mine asked me if they want to make a new banner management, and they were considering using PHP and everything. PHP will be used, that's okay, we need to be able to save it on the server somehow. But they actually wanted to build an interface with Ajax and I don't know whatsoever, which is nice and all, but it takes forever. So I told them, hey, let's sit together and just make a quick prototype of what this thing is supposed to do. So what you see here is actually a prototype that I built in an hour? Yeah, pretty much an hour. And the idea is that you have a banner management where you would have like the banners that have an ID category and so on and so forth. You have clients that you could manage, you have domains that you can manage, countries and categories and so on and so forth. And obviously you have to be able to edit them and or to make new ones. So you give them the possibility actually to make new ones, like, well, in this case it tries to save something that doesn't exist. That's okay. Where am I anyway? In details. Let's go to banner a little bit more. So here. So obviously here you will be able to choose between a client, which doesn't exist right now, the link of the banner, the banner file that you could upload, in case whoever gives you the banner gives you some special code that you need to enter, you could enter that here. Without much effort, I have a date picker where I can choose the dates. I have categories that I could fill, I can say which domains and so on and so forth, and I could save this. Obviously right now it doesn't do anything, it doesn't save, it doesn't edit or anything because there's no information, there's no server connection or any capabilities of getting these things. But as you see, just by sitting down with the client, I was able to create what they wanted or what they need in about an hour. Just by, well, what do you want to be able to do? Yeah, well, I would like this and this and this. Okay, let's put the screens together. And right now, I actually got a prototype that I can start developing on and can write the code for it. Of course, you can always make it nicer afterwards and so on, but this is more than enough to actually show someone what the functionality should be like as a first instance. Now, let me see if I can give you a good example what you can do with Flex again. This is a little bit a more complicated example actually. There we go. As you see, it has a code block again. And then eventually, now in this case, no, huh? No, in this case, no. There's no design view. Where's the design? There must be designs. There we go. Why the graphics not showing up? Well, this actually would be a little desktop application. Sadly, right now, I don't have the graphics in here, and I'm not quite sure why. But that comes because I just reinstalled my machine not all too long ago, and probably something messed up there in this project. But it's actually quite easy also to change the layout of certain things. For example, let's go back to our to this little application here that we have, the little about screen. Now, I really don't like that this button is here on top. It's just plain ugly. But do not fret, we can change these things actually quite easily. And also, I'm not a big fan of there we go. As you see, just a couple small clicks and it's centered, or if I really want to, I can put it on the, oops, on the bottom. That's pretty much how I like it, so I can have space for the graphics and the button can be nicely down here. But this button, I maybe want something nicer looking. I mean, it's nice that it looks like this and that I also here that I can change the colors and everything, and waste time by making it look pretty, but I'd rather really would like to have a graphic for this thing. So something that is new to Flex and that Flash also doesn't have is that you can define CSS, technically CSS rules for how things look like. Let me show you this. Let's make a new CSS file. We call that styles.css. Now, also for the CSS file, you don't have to worry. Flex has thought really of everything. You do not have to be here like when you do HTML and be like, oh my god, I need to write CSS rules and oh, this is ugly. Okay, I have code completion and everything, but what the hell does everything mean? No, why make it complicated? Let's kill this for a second. Also here you got a design view and you get the possibility to actually say, I want to make a new style and I want to base it on a component. In this case, I want to base it on a button. There you go. You already get all the states that such a button can have, the up state, the over state, down state, and so on and so forth. And you can change it. Obviously, you still have the same possibilities as you had before, but there's much more detail actually in this. Like here, I just can define the style. Like again, as before, I can change the color for this thing, but I also get the possibility to add graphics to the button. I can choose between flash symbols, which means it comes from SVF. I'm just going to leave that out. It's a little bit too much right now, I guess. So let's just grab an image. Let's say I want an up button, and the up button should look like just a second, I'm actually not sure where I have graphics for this. Let's go over here. No? Ah, yes, I know where. There we have images. Let's say I want to add, how about this here? Okay. So obviously right now here it looks kind of ugly because it just smushes it into the button, and it doesn't know how high or anything it should be. But that's not that big a deal because you can always change that then within your application. So now that I have this, as you see, it already wrote everything that I need. I can go back to my application and where is it? Did I save it? No. There we go. I have to add this CSS so it even knows that it exists, because right now my application has no idea. Even this is quite simple. You have, again, some tag, you have mx style, you give the source, in this case it's styles.css. Hooray. Looks nice, doesn't it? Obviously it tries to stretch the image now as big as the button is, which means you will just have to change the size of the button actually to what it's supposed to be. Like, I actually don't even know. I suppose it's something like this. No, that's too big. Let's try 2424. Oh, there we go. Nice button. As you see, it doesn't take much work actually to start changing the way the components look. So it's quite easy actually to achieve that you have a good looking Flex application. A good example for this is I actually just stumbled upon that today, which probably Adobe was working on as well, I think, because it's the Flex Showcase. Flex.org is actually a community by Flex developers that's been around for, I think since 2005. And not all too long ago, actually, I think Adobe donated, if you want, some developers to make the showcase look much nicer, which shows by the time it takes to load.
Skip this intro.
There we go. So all these things here that you see, like this originally looked like every other button in this program. Originally everything, if I take the styles away, ended up looking like this actually. Well, not like this exactly, but you saw what it looked like before. So buttons, they changed to this. Standard sliders, they changed to something nice looking. All these drop downs, they made special looking. And it looks nice, and it actually behaves also quite nice. So if you ever want to go check out what people actually build, because all these things here are community created content. By community I mean, of course, there's also agencies that build stuff that showcase it here, but obviously just everyone who wants to showcase something that they've done with Flex, they can submit it here and display it. Now, so much. I don't think I want to go into more detail exactly about Flex and the Flex Builder, how it works. Do you have some questions so far? There he comes.
So you talked about those states, and if I understood it right, this is for static content, if you want. And I didn't really understand how you put things together if you have moving things coming up on the stage, and how you connect that with
the state
Actionscript, and how you say on which states the new things are gonna appear, etc. I don't know if this is gonna take too long to explain.
No, maybe I should just specify a little bit into more detail what states are. Think of states as templates, pretty much. They are not static, even though they appear to be static. Like obviously, a button that is over here and any type of content that I will build in here is sort of static, but the components, that's one of the strong points of Flex. The components are quite dynamic. That means even if I start writing a whole ton of code, as long as I tell this thing that, hey, once it's too big, you should be bigger. You should resize yourself. It will do so, regardless if I just designed this thing here as it is. Same thing also for content, for example. Let's just make a really quick example. Okay. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to write a little function that I want to call first thing when the application starts. So instead of actually calling current state to set my state, I'm going to remove this. Instead, I'm going to tell him once the application has loaded, I want you to call this function. And we will go to, in here we will switch immediately to this credits page. Now, we have that text box in there. This one. I will give this text box an identifier so I can actually access it, like my text. Could have done it here too, doesn't matter. Now, I'll explain this in a second. I'm just going to write it down real quick. As you see, it's already bitching at me. Zoom the code? Good question. I think I can. Yay. Okay, now I just need to know where I am. Okay, so I'm starting, I write a method that is called first thing once the application is started. I tell it go immediately to this credit state. And the next thing is I want the application to do something on an event. In this case, it's an enter frame event, which is fired every frame. This is something that is similar to, or is always the same with Flash. Maybe I should get out of this for a second. Wrong button. Flash is always based on a frame rate, which in this case is this 24 frames per second. For Flex, this is the same thing, since Flex is just a library on top of the Flash player. So whenever the frame changes, I want it to actually call this method, which I'm going to write now. Now, since I'm doing this really quick and dirty, just to make sure that actually this text field exists, I'm going to check, is my text actually even there? And if my text is actually there, my text plus blah. So every time this is called now, I should get more blahs. Sounds nice. And there you go. As you see, I get blahs. I don't know till where. It keeps going and going. And as you see here, the content just gets more and more and more. And automatically I actually start filling things up. Of course, this is kind of ugly because it just goes into never-ending nirvana. I can't.
Which state you're gonna put the dynamic content by identifying your components by ID? So you.
That's always the same. Yeah, since Flash, this has always been like that. If you want to oh, sorry, he didn't say the question. He doesn't have the mic. What was the question again? Oh, that you. Okay. The question. Yeah.
I just asked if how you choose on which stage you're gonna put your content, but so that's by identifying your components on your stage by a unique ID. Is
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yes. For example, I don't have, even though I have different states here, I cannot call this button. I cannot call it the same. What did I call it? My text. Once I call, even though they're supposed to be different states, I automatically get a problem because it tells me identifier my text used more than once. So you have to make them unique to actually access them. There's other ways how you can actually circumvent these type of problems, but that would be going way too much into detail actually to explain these. But yeah, you actually can just add content and all sorts of jazz just by identifying wherever it needs to go. This, of course, is a very simple example. I could, for example, show you a list. How a list is filled. Let's take this away. We'll stay with the credits screen. We're just going to abuse it now. I can zoom, I guess. Oops. Okay. I'm removing this because it doesn't need to write blah the whole time. Okay. In the design view, in the credits, I will add, if I can find it, where's the data grid? Do I want a data grid? Yeah, data grid looks, sounds good. Let's add a data grid. So, I will call this data grid my data grid. As you see, I'm very inventive. Good. Now, this is just plain about adding dynamic content that isn't there right now. So if I want to add something to this data grid, I can actually just create an object. Actually, this is going to be a little bit more complicated, but I'm going to explain it regardless. What I need right now is an array filled with objects which hold the data that I want to display in that data grid. So in order not to just have one line, or actually I could just make one line, let's say I'm making an object and it has name. It has and it has a note. There we go. This is kind of weird. So now that I have this, I'm going to add this whole thing into an array. This is just what it expects, since most of the times in a list view you're not just going to have one line. It automatically expects an array or some sort of container that has objects with information. It could also be an XML. So I make a new array and I add this object in here. Nice. And now all that is left for me is actually call my data grid. What is it called again? Source? Data provider, exactly. Is in this case array. Okay. Now that I have this in here, it tells me I have a problem. Oh, yeah, I'm trying to call a method that doesn't exist anymore because I killed it. Switch to credits, where is it? As you see, I can double click on the errors and it will bring me to the line where my problem is, which in this case is the click, because this function doesn't exist anymore, so let's just eliminate that. So I compile it, and it doesn't show up. That's not nice. Ah, yeah, of course, it cannot show up. Where is it? Okay, here. Now in the data grid, since I have these three columns, as you see, quite simply defined by these data grid columns, I can call it name, where, note, and from that object within, you should take name, you should take where, you should take note. So obviously it didn't find anything before. And there you go. I have Webmardi, Fribourg, we rock. So quite simply and quite fast you can actually add dynamic content to these things. And as I said, these states are just really just templates that you can use to define more or less static pages that have content inside that change, but themselves do not really change that much from the components and everything. There are other possibilities to actually achieve these things, but that would mean I would have to write a whole ton of code, and I really don't want to do that. Well, not that I don't want to do that, but I think it'll bore the crap out of you guys. Good. Now, another thing that I want to show you, because right now all I've shown you is quite ugly, is, as you see, as soon as I added something in here, let me remove this, let me remove that. As soon as I add a checkbox or add a combo box, everything gets added to the right. That's kind of pissy. It looks kind of ugly too. Okay, we can change that. That's the nice thing about Flex. I have this box here, but in this box I can place more boxes, and so on and so forth. So if I want to make sure that I have a text box that is on top and then all the other stuff is on the bottom, I can just drop a vertical box, a V box as it's called, in here, and it should be 100% of that whole thing, and it should just be 50% of the parent container. And as you see, I already got one in here. I don't even know if copy paste works, but let's try that. That looks weird. No, that shouldn't be like that. Actually, I told you crap. So obviously, as soon as, oops, what did I kill? Oh. So obviously, as soon as I try to add something else to the parent container, it will still try to do it horizontally because the parent container is a horizontal box. So this thing I will make instead 100% of the container. Or let's make it more complicated. I want this to be 50 in width and I want it to be 100 in height, so I can drop something to the right. And on the right I will drop, let's say, an image. Okay. Obviously right now there is no image. Let's load something. Let's take something from the Adobe stock. That's empty, that's always good. Let's just grab this. Whew! Huge. So obviously I want this to be 50% as well. And the height can be 100%. I don't care if you scale it ugly or not, it's just gonna show me like this. Now in here I can make my text box. Tell it already, you should be about this size. And then I can add some buttons on the bottom. Like that. Cool. But I would like you to be in the middle. So as you see, in the design view you can really quickly just change pretty much everything. The only thing that you have to keep in mind is just the way you nest things. But it's pretty much the same thing as you do in HTML. So, okay, I think this explains Flex, what it is actually, to a basic level. So, if you guys have time, I would like to show you Air, because Air is packaged with Flex, obviously. I'm not going to make that long because, yes?
I maybe have a question.
Microphone. Oh, you don't have the microphone? Where's the microphone?
Can you show us how you organize the AS3 code in
The AS3
bigger,
code.
larger projects where you have some MX?
Absolutely.
But more AS3, for example?
Okay.
The other question was you don't need in the AS3 code to import your classes?
You still need to import classes if you have classes. Absolutely. But Mxml allows you to write inline code, as you saw just now. But without any problem, you can use classes. I will show you right now how this is done. Okay. It's quite simple. Okay. First of all, let's have some little playtime. Another thing I want to show you is, since Flash Player is now in version 10, since version 10 we have actual 3D handling, and that actual 3D handling can be applied to anything. It's not just Flash itself that can handle all these 3D things. You can even use these on all these components. And for example, let's say I want to rotate the whole box. Oh, this thing already has an ID, doesn't it? Yes, it does. There we go. Woo! There's you see, even though it has complicated components in there that have click events and all sorts of things and everything, you can easily, you've seen it, it took me like 2 minutes now, you can easily manipulate it to do anything. Okay, enough of that. Let me show you a little bit more complicated project and how I built it. Let me close all these things. Okay. Since a Flex application always has to start with an Mxml, I'm pretty sure they always have to start with an Mxml. You could start or have an entry point be an Actionscript class, but it's a really, really bad idea because Flex needs so many things to be initialized at the beginning that you don't want to write that. It's just purely insane. So as usual, you always start with an Mxml. As you see here, as I said, this is a little bit more complex. This thing is actually not as the others in application. This is a module. This means this is a standalone little thing that I can load in a already existing Flex application. But it doesn't really matter because the way you started is pretty much the same. What you would do with an application is, I have to show it in the other one because it's not that good in here. Let me clear all these things out. Let's start with a clean application. Okay. All right. This is the start of every Mxml Flex application that you do, except for this line. That's the basics. Now, in order to actually not having everything within this Mxml and actually give control over to some Actionscript class, you still have to write some code in here. But it's, again, rather simple. What you would do is, first I will have to create a little Actionscript class. We'll call this test class. This is really the basic Actionscript as you may know it from Flash itself when you wrote AS files. So here, as usual, you have it automatically creates you the package structure, the constructor, and everything. So let's say once the constructor is called, I want you to call init, and within init, I want you to trace hello world. Simple. Now, in order to actually call that, what I have to do is once the application is loaded, so I do again application complete, I have to call some method in here that actually will be able to call that class. So again, I have an init, private function init. Now, obviously I need an instance of that class, so I call it test. And it's of the type test class. As you see, it already recognized that there's a class somewhere in my project. And create a new test class. So once I compile this now, in order actually to see that trace, I will have to compile it in debugger mode, what I haven't done so far. So up here you just got this bug. So once I compile this, I get down here, hello world. And now the whole control is actually passed to my Actionscript class, and I can keep going from there and do whatever I want. It's quite simple as that. It's as simple as that, really. Now, let's say though, if I still would have something on this one that I need to control. Let's say I still have a button that I would like to control. Let's call it my button. Let me know if I should zoom in or not. Or is it okay? Good. Okay. Even though I have an instance of... I am supposed to zoom or not? Yes. Oh, okay. Sorry, I misunderstood that. All right. So, I got a button over here, but my task class has actually no idea that this button exists. So what I have to do is actually pass this Mxml to my class. Now, obviously, at the moment, it tells me, hey, dude, what the fuck are you trying to do? What do you want? I don't want no arguments. Okay, let's add these arguments. So I add... oh, I'm not in the constructor. Yeah, thank you. Main stage is, in this case, what did I call this thing? Example FP10. And I'll make a variable over here. So I can call this within the whole class. Stage is main stage. And then within init, I have the possibility to actually go to stage. And as you see, once I type I actually get my button. And I can change it. Label equals yay. And in the Mxml, I call the label nay. In the design view, it actually will tell me nay, but of course not, because the whole thing is not compiled yet. So once I compile it, yay. As you see, it gives the control to the Actionscript class, and since the Actionscript class knows what the stage is and what's on the stage, it can manipulate whatever's on the stage. So quite easily done. Now concerning a more complex project, as I said, this is a module. That means this will be a standalone SVF file. This will be not like, if I show you this in here, the created SVF for what we just saw, it's this one over here, the example FPS 10. A module itself will be then my module.svf, so that's something you would have to load separately, which allows you actually to write huge applications and not have everything within one SVF. So it's just the same as if you would have done it with Flash and just separated everything. This shows you what I've done actually with a little bit more complex project. The module actually gets called by the original Flex application, starts itself up, and also gives control to another class again, which in this case is engine, which then all the rest in here is pretty much ActionScript controlled. Except, as I tried to show you before, I have it within my package structure. I have a GUI package which contains my screens that I might use in there. Now, to show you what the end result of this thing was, if I would know where it is. This might actually cause some errors right now because I'm not sure if it actually still runs or not. As I figured. But it's okay, it still works. You actually seen this before, except that you didn't see the graphics. This is actually the application, and this is now a standalone application, which is built with Flex, which allows me, in this case, it's a simple program that just starts an Apache web server, stops it, and allows me to configure it. Yeah, it's just pretty simple, pretty standard, and not very nice. But it does the job. Yeah. This is not done with Air, by the way, because Air wouldn't be able to do these things. It's done with Sync, which is a third-party application which costs a whole shitload, but it gives you a little bit more power than Air does. So let me show you what you can do with Air in here, and what the big difference is if you have to actually code with Air or not.
A question about Flex with communication with server. It's the same as with Flash. You need always to need a PHP server, and yes, it's.
You got different possibilities as you had with Flash. You got at one hand, you can still communicate with PHP, obviously. You can use specific server products like the Flash Media server, or there's the lifecycle services now, which used to be Flex Data. There's all types of connectivity that you can add to Flex actually, but that hasn't changed much, really. There is a couple components within Flex that simplify this, but most of the times in a real project, you're still going to do this with ActionScript. This hasn't changed much, really. But one thing that Flex can help you with is actually create some of that code already. For example, if you would have an application that has a data grid and needs to actually get information, I never really tried that because usually I always build it custom. Was it here? No. Bing. Exactly, that's the problem. You will have to build actually already a project that will use the server technology, like here. As you see, you got the choice between ASP.NET, Cold Fusion, the Java server, PHP, and others. So you got quite a vast choice. And the nice thing about it is it will write you some code already. And eventually, if you really want to, you could actually add it to the web. You have to actually give a web root so it can upload those things. And the code that it generates is not very pretty. But I guess if you just want like basic connectivity for a prototype, for example, it'll do the job without much work, really. But for a production environment, no, never. But yes, connectivity is there. It's the only thing that is actually different between Flash is that, or the Flash IDE itself is that Flash used to have, where do I have it? Used to have a web service component, which apparently is gone here too. Oh, is it finished in CS4? Oh, I didn't even know that. Okay, yeah, as you see, and Flex since 2 already removed web services, so you would have to code everything by yourself. Microphone to Mr. Adrian back there.
What's your best practice to make DB connection with your Flex 2, for example?
Oof, best practice.
How do you do it?
It depends what you want to do. It really absolutely depends what you want to do. Nowadays, I think one of probably the best ways of talking with Flash is probably SendAMF from the Send framework, because it allows you to just make simple calls, direct calls from within Flash to a Send server, or to the AMF server, so to say. And it doesn't require you to serialize or unserialize anything, because you can send a native object from Flash directly to the server, and the server will just transform it to a PHP object or whatever it needs. And the server can push new information to you, and you automatically have actual Flash objects. So you don't have to actually do a whole transcoding, encoding, and all that jazz. You just work as usual, as if that data was already somewhere there. That's probably the best practice right now. Obviously it takes time, but what doesn't? And SendAMF is actually quite well documented, and for simple things it's quite easy to use. Else you can always do the same thing as they used to do since Flash 5, Flash 6, that you just make HTTP requests and just get serialized information, and then a string of information that you will have to change. That's the old school way of doing it, but nowadays I don't see why you would still do that with all the possibilities that you have. It's also a security question. Does that answer your question?
Thank you.
Okay. Okay. So as I said, web services do not exist anymore, I think, since Flex 2. Those just have to be coded by yourself. Now, Air is entirely a different beast, but then again, it's not entirely a different beast, because it's, once again, it's just a new Flex project. But instead of a web application, you make a desktop application. So make one. We have no server connectivity. Just create the project. It's all okay. Yeah. And once again, Flex Builder will create the basic structure that you need. That's pretty much it. Instead that it's a MX application, it's an MX windowed application. And here again, you just start going with whatever you need to build. And my favorite is just a button, because it's simple to do. Yet still, you got the design view where you can view things. And once you compile it, run as Adobe Air application, it actually compiles you an Air application and starts it. And as you see, you already got, oops, standalone application. It's quite easy. Air does have more features, obviously, than just Flex alone, but they're quite well documented within the Flex Builder. Where do we have it? I'm probably blind. Hang on. So yeah, it has pretty much everything that you no. Yeah, it's just the documentation, but all the documentation that you need to develop Air applications is in there. And changing the, for example, one of the nice features of Air application is that you can either do it with the native window look or the native operating system look, or actually make it completely custom. Flex also there makes it really easy actually to change these things. Like I got an attribute show flex chrome. No, I don't want that. And then that's the only thing that is different from a Flex application. You have an XML file where you can define a couple informations about this Air application, what version it is, the name of it, the file name, the IDs, whatsoever. And then you got these two things, the system Chrome and transparent. So if I tell this thing, I don't want no system Chrome, let's make it none. Did it compile? No, I have to get out of here. There we go. Already no system Chrome. If that's not enough, you can always turn the whole thing transparent so that you only see the content. Oh, it doesn't want true. Ooh, shit, sorry. I like false much better. There you go. As you see, the button is over here, all by itself. That poor fellow. I don't think I can drag it. No, it's just going to be here. So yeah, also with just a couple lines that I have to change, I can easily manipulate what an application is going to look like. Yeah, I don't think I should go any further into Air. There was something that I think I forgot to tell you guys. I'm not sure what it was. Ah, look, we still have this thing open. No, I actually think I tried to give you an overview of what Flex can do and what Flex doesn't. If you got any questions, if you want me to show you something, if you need to know something, ask now. Because I'm out of ideas.
How can you interact with the operating system? Let's say you want to, I don't know, run an application or
you can't.
A file. You can't.
With Air, you can't.
Okay.
That's one of the big limitations that Air has. That's actually been bothering me since Air has come out. I understand why Adobe decided to actually not do that, because you don't want to start off with a new tool actually to create desktop applications, and you're going to have people on Windows especially probably running wild and creating Trojans and keyloggers and all sorts of crap. So it makes sense that they didn't allow this, but hopefully in the near future they're going to change that. There are ways how you can achieve this with Air. For example, instead of using the native Air installer, you could just package it up yourself with an installer and have some other application actually start your Air application and then communicate, let's say, through some sort of XML socket or a local connection, whatever. So there's a couple ways how you can achieve that. Or you use Sync. Sync allows these things. But up until Adobe actually decides to be less scared of these things, we're just going to have to wait.
But you have storage possibilities in Air.
You
can you tell us about?
Yes, you do have access to the file system. That means that's the big joke. For example, let's say you could call. I'm a Windows user, so I'm just going to say you could call the C drive, and you could get an index of everything in the C drive, and you could start deleting everything in there. That does work. It's quite nice. Yeah. Haven't tried it though. I swear. So yeah, you have file system access. You can save, you can load, and you got an integrated SQLite, the engine that allows you to save a database somewhere, add information, take information from there, also encrypt that information, obviously, so prying eyes can't look into it. So yeah, those possibilities are there. Air also has a slight weaker sandbox than the normal Flash player. It's a little bit more forgiving. It allows external calls to I don't know if you guys know this, but Flash, for example, if you want to load an image from somewhere else, most of the times you can load it, but you cannot manipulate it because it's not yours, and you shouldn't be doing it. That's what they think. and with Air, you actually get these possibilities to do that, and you get possibilities to. One of the recent things that I stumbled upon was Flash Player was able to set request headers. Let's say you had the website that you wanted to get something, but the website requested the basic authentication to give you, so that you would supply a username and password. You can't do that in Flash anymore itself, but in in Air, for example, you can still do these things. So they do allow you a couple more things than Flash itself, but it's quite limited. That's the sad part, actually. Yet still people come up with quite nice stuff, and I'm pretty sure most of you, well, whoever twitters knows this probably. I mean, that's one of the prime examples, I think, of an Air application, Twirl, which is nothing else but a Twitter client, but it's based on, it's built in Air. The other nice thing about Air, I'm sure you guys know that though, is you can build Air applications purely in JavaScript. Which, if you know JavaScript quite well, is pretty nice, I would say. So yeah, here you see typical Twitter client. That's really about it. And another nice tool that I actually want to show you is this one. This is a great overview for, oh wow, this is nice. What's that? Oh, it's an update. Okay. This is a Flex Air application that gives you, as the name it says, the Tour de Flex. It shows you a lot of possibilities that Air actually gives you. Like, can I move this away? This is really bothering me here. Like, for example, here we have the Air capabilities. A file system tree. As you see, it already shows me my drives with everything that you will find on my drive. Quite nice. And also you see how this is achieved quite easily. It doesn't really take much code. Or how to actually add an HTML browser instance, a WebKit instance. Even has a little browser example where you can add stuff. Oh, that's interesting. I guess I have to add HTTP, else it doesn't understand it. Is it actually even loading or not? Oh yes, I do. Ah, there we go. So yeah. Well, this only works here because the whole thing is built in Flash, actually. Usually it wouldn't work. Then we have tools like all types of UI controls. It just really shows you all the possibilities, actually. These are some, for example, ways of how the button could look. As you see, this is really the standard button as you have it seen a ton today. That's the same standard button, but you tell it should have a graphic as an icon. This is a completely skinned button, and here we have a completely custom button, actually. And again, with the whole source code, so this is actually quite a nice tool to look in all the possibilities that Flex has to offer. Also has API examples, for example, for Flickr, Last.fm, and so on. And then we have, this is always nice. I don't know how many times you're going to use that. Charts. They look pretty and they come in 3D. So this is all these things that you can actually do with Flex, and it's powerful. It takes a while to get used to. For me, I've been, for example, with Flash since ActionScript 1, since Flash 4, and up to this day, I've been working now with Flex for, like, really working with Flex over a year, and I still haven't learned anything that, still haven't learned all the things that Flex can do, because it's just immensely powerful. So this is something you guys should check out if you're really interested. Right now I have no resource or anything with all these links to these things, but I will make sure to add them to this page, or at least link them on this page, So you get a download link to the Flex SDK or Flex Builder trial, which is 60 days. And a little tip, if you uninstall it and reinstall it, it's again 60 days. It's quite nice. And it doesn't destroy your project, it just finds them again. What? That's the other thing, it's free for students, and Adobe is actually offering Flex Builder for free to unemployed people at the moment too. That's also quite nice. That's really, must say, good work. Yes, so I will make sure that I will give you all the resources that you will need to this Flex Tour thing, to all these web-based Flex tools that I have open. Hey, that's cool. Tells me it fell asleep. Yeah, and so on and so forth. Any more questions? No? All right, let's dig in then. Thanks for listening.